Hey friends, Tyler Jefcoat here with Return On Podcast. I want to welcome you to today's episode. Have you ever wondered how the most successful leaders and entrepreneurs are able to excel beyond the rest of their peers to build empires, to build financial security, and to build businesses that can operate whether they choose to take Friday off or not? Well, that and some adjacent topics are going to be today's podcast episode. And to talk about this, I'm going to bring on a really good friend of mine named Gary Wilbers. Gary is a high performance business coach and is kind of a mastermind enthusiast, which is great because I am too. You'll hear us on the episode talk about our first experiences diving into masterminds, but they have been a crucial part of my life as a leader, as I've learned to hire people, to make mistakes quickly, to sell businesses. Being in masterminds have been crucial. And that's why I started the Sellers Roundtable, which is the mastermind I lead. Gary has a set of masterminds that he leads as well. If you're ever curious about what it looks like to surround yourself with a tribe of other leaders to improve your performance as the top of your organization so that the organization can perform better, this might be the episode for you. Stay tuned as I dive into a great conversation with Gary Wilbers. It's time to maximize profitability and cash flow. It's time to learn habits and hacks from the best e-com CEOs. It's time for Return On Podcast with me, Tyler Jefcoat. All right, guys. Today's episode of Return On Podcast, I am so excited to bring in my friend, my brother, Gary Wilbers. Gary, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm so glad you were here. Just a little inside baseball here, guys. Gary and I have been trying to schedule this interview for about a month now, and I had life get in the way. Gary, you had some life get in the way, and now we're here. We've arrived, and you guys are really in for a treat because, Gary, you're one of those guys that I respect the way you live life. You're a great businessman. You're a great leader. And so I think one of the things that you've agreed to talk with me about today is just kind of the power of community as an entrepreneur. But I think it'd be helpful for my audience to get a little bit of a glimpse of your story. And normally when somebody starts a business, something has gone horribly wrong in their life. Like what's kind of your story of kind of pivoting into entrepreneurship?
Well, I started out in the wireless industry, but back in those days, we would call it the mobile phone industry. And that back in 1990. So, I was 23 years old, young as could go, and you just a lot of spit and vigor, just going to make it happen. And I can tell you along that path, I made a lot of mistakes. And probably the biggest mistake, Tyler, I will tell you I made is realizing that you as a leader makes the difference in your organization. And that was early on because it was from sheer brute force that I was able to grow from 2 people to 5 to 15 to 20. Ultimately, though, as I changed, my organization took off. We had up one time up to 150 employees, about 4 or 5 different businesses within our wireless industry. But it was because I was willing to change. And I think as entrepreneurs are sitting here, I know they want to go to the next level. They want to grow. But the thing we have to look at is ourselves. But I had to look at myself and I had to really learn about myself. And that self-awareness of self becomes so important. And I really look at today that made the difference. And I'll give you a crazy story. Early on in my career, somebody went to work for me and he came to work for me and stuff. And he ended up, he had left. And that was my sheer brute force time, like going to do it. And it's my way or the highway type of individual. Well, a few years later, someone else that he knew was going to go to work for me. And the guy even told him, and I live in a smaller town in Jefferson City, Missouri. And he said, "Do you know Gary?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I know Gary." He goes, "But do you know the Gary that you're going to work for?" And the guy said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And he didn't bash me too hard, but he said he's a little different in work than he is, in personal, what he is personally and stuff. And the guy came to work for me. Well, this is as I started making those changes. I was still not perfect by any means, but I had made some of those changes to really learn about myself, and I became a different boss. And this gentleman, of course, seen him out 3 or 6 months later, and the guy says, "How's it working? Are you still working for Gary?" Because he was surprised he was still working for me. And he said, "Man," he goes, "I love it. He's a great boss." And he's like, "What?" He goes, he's not like this. And he goes, oh, no, he's not like that anymore, and things of that nature. So we have to learn as leaders, how do we change, especially when you're leading your organization, because you set the tone for the organization, you set the culture for it, and you set that environment that's there. But that's one of those things that as I got in the wireless industry, had about 8 to 10 different companies I ran. The wireless was the big one. I was fortunate in 2012, sold that business and decided to really follow my passion. And that's why I got into business coaching, masterminds, and speaking now, because I want to give other business owners that same opportunity that I feel like I've been given.
And so, Gary, as you think like you're kind of describing a kind of a classic before and after story, some growth mindset. My question for you is, I'm actually curious because you hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs. Is this something that you found to be kind of an innate quality of yourself to be kind of introspective and reflective and be responsive? I don't know, maybe have the humility to want to change and evolve and grow? Or is this something that was there like an aha moment or something that kind of imbued that mindset to you that's helped you?
I think a couple different things. I did not have that. My wife may say sometimes I still don't have it, Tyler, if you know what I mean. Somebody knows you well. But I really do try to think about it. But the only thing I did have that growth mindset. I wanted to learn. And probably one of the biggest things early on that I would say did it is, at that time I had a business coach, and that business coach asked me, we did an extended disc assessment. And when he came back with it, of course, I'm a high D because I was an entrepreneur. But then he talked about those other styles and how you come across those individuals. And I wished I could say, oh, yeah, that was the one thing. But it was one of the things that woke me up that I need to be a little more self-aware, and I need to decide what type of leader do I want to be. And then getting myself in. I've been in masterminds all my life. I've done business coaching, had business coaches that's helped me. I've done strategic coach, I've been in other masterminds. So I found out that by learning, I was really able to change that, because the challenge is when we sit as entrepreneurs, we get a lot of isolation. We're kind of in this cocoon because you can't go to your best friend a lot of times because they're not business owners. So they don't understand the same challenges. And I live in a state town. Jefferson City is the capital of Missouri, which is a great place to live and raise and grow your family. But the only problem is, there's a lot of people that work for the state. And you know how their income is determined? The state legislature every year deciding what percentage of increase are they going to get or not get. And so that creates a real challenge. So you have to get out of yourself. And I think that's the key for business owners, is realizing no matter where you're at, I don't care if you've been in business 20 years, you better be continuing to learn, because I can tell you the last year, 3 years, 5 years, business is changing and it's going to continue to change.
I love that. Yeah. You're talking about you're right. The entrepreneurially wired person or someone who has fallen into entrepreneurship and feels it's hard, guys. You guys know this, but it's also really empowering to realize, okay, I actually have a strong internal locus of control. I'm not waiting on the state legislature to pass down a 2.5% raise. I can go make things happen for my family and for my community and for my business. That's a really empowering place to be in. But to your point, Gary, it is lonely, right? You end up in a situation where the friends that you go play cards with and hang out with, they're great guys, but they don't want to hear you and me, complain about making payroll. They're like business owner, first world problems, business owner, rich guy, go figure that out. Right. And so my question for you is as somebody who wants to really kind of embody that growth mindset and maybe even take their business, their organization, their life to the next level. Are you seeing any areas that are helping people scale or kind of level up their performance?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different things that you can do. Number one, in scaling your business, you really got to take a good look on your business. Is what's going to take it to that next level. Give you an example. One of my clients that I coached was, doing a good business, but he was about 8 million in sales with about 8 to 10% margin on his business and was doing well. But he knew he wanted to take the next level. Now, he was a salesman and he's a very good salesperson and stuff. But the challenge he was having is he'd go out through the middle of the week, make a lot of sales, makes lots of calls, and was very good in relationships with his clients. But then on Mondays and Fridays, he'd get bombarded by everything in the office. So we started talking, what do you need to take it to the next level? In his case, it was an operations manager. And we brought on an operations manager really looking at what was the strengths that he needed from that person. And what he needed was for that person to take care of the office and really get some good processes and procedures in place, because he was the salesperson. And he had other salespeople too. But man, when he went, he's attractive, and meaning not attractive in looks, but he's attractive because the type of individual he is. He makes long-lasting relationships. So we really looked at, well, over the next 5 years, that business now has grown over to 20 million in sales, up to 22 million in certain years, and over 15 to 16% margin. And yes, he's had to bring some more staff on with that increase, but it's made a difference. But the biggest thing it's made for him, now when he goes out in the middle part of the week, a lot of times during the summer, he takes Fridays off because the operations person has the things handled there. And if he does need something, he reaches out to him during the week and says, hey, we need some feedback on this. And he's able to get that feedback. And then everything at the office is taken care of. So it's not like, oh my gosh, now I've just got off the road. And you know how it is if you've been on the road for 3 days and you're out in the evenings and everything else. And then you come back and you feel like you're bombarded. Now he doesn't feel that way. So that's one thing I think with scaling that people really have to look at when they're looking at that other area. Then the other area I think they have to look. Go ahead.
No, I was one quick comment. I want to hear your other area. Please don't lose that one. But I think that's such an important mindset shift as an entrepreneur to embrace, is that, guys, remember this, like a kind of construct of a 40-hour work week is kind of a factory construct, right? And so this idea that there's no way that I could double my business unless I just double my hours. Well, guess what, buddy? You're going to run out of energy pretty quickly. At some point, and you made this comment really early on, Gary, but like the bottleneck is at the top. The limiting factor of your organization is going to be you as the leader. And I do think that learning to work smarter, by the way, CEO of a $20 million company still works very hard, trust me. But the ability to work smarter creates scale, whereas just working harder and trying to like white knuckle it is a great way to create burnout and kind of being frustrated with your business. And I just want to make sure that people caught that comment, because I think that's really important. And yeah, I don't know. I want to make sure I don't want to get you off track. What was the second thing that you said is really something you're saying?
Now, I want to add one thing to what you said, though. The thing is you don't have to feel guilty that you're not there on Friday. And that's the thing is, if you set your systems up, then you don't have to feel guilty. When we feel guilty is when we don't have those in and we feel like we're always kind of in chaos. So we don't have those. So what do you need in your organization? Now there's a place and time that has to come in, but that becomes the key, because when you're a better individual, guess what happens to your company? Your company grows and you continue to expand. That second one I think is so crucial is so many business owners, we talked about a little bit earlier, they live in isolation. They live in this area that, nobody understands them. Most people can't go home to their wife or spouse or significant other and say, I've got these problems, how should I handle it? Because normally that may not be there. My wife's a great spouse and a great individual, but the thing is she's a veterinarian by trade. She's not been in the customer service and some of those other things that I need to know and have feedback on. So that's where, to me, that's where a group of people have to, I don't care if it's men, women, or what, you need to have other individuals that's up-leveling your game. And you and I both have seen this, Tyler, I know. But the thing is that's what makes you better. I mean, I used to do a training with Strategic Coach, and that's the Dan Sullivan group, and once a quarter go up to Chicago. And I had people in Jeff City say, why do you do that? Because, that's 5 hours away. I had to jump on a plane to go to do that. But I did it every quarter because I was up-leveling me. I learned new things that I was able to bring back. And that's really, when I look at my trajectory in my company, is when I got out of myself and I started hiring a business coach, started going to Masterminds, that's when my business changed. Because what did it do? My vision grew. And what happened is really it went from vision. I believe most entrepreneurs have a vision of where they want their company to go. But the challenging part they have is they have no clarity on how they're going to get there. Think about that for a minute. You have vision in your company right now. You know that you're listening to this podcast. You know you'd like to take your business to this level. If it's amount of sales or what you would like to grow into, what you'd like your next product to be, you have that vision. But the challenging part we have for most entrepreneurs is we don't have clarity on how we're going to do it. And think about that. If you don't have that, it becomes the bottleneck, and you become that bottleneck because you don't have that clarity. And sometimes you need that from other individuals. And you don't have to always take their advice, but when you hear from them, it makes you start thinking differently. And when you start thinking differently, you start acting differently.
No, I love it. Yeah. So I don't know if any of you guys have never been in called a mastermind or a CEO roundtable, kind of Gary and I are big fans of these. So you're going to hear our bias here, but I think this is just a group of people that are in your stage or slightly ahead of you in terms of running their companies, running their lives. And you become kind of a board of advisors, a board of directors, an advisory group, an accountability group, things like that. Gary, I'm gonna share my first experience going into a mastermind. I'd love to hear yours as well, because I think people kind of feel like this is it can be a pretty intimidating thing to consider getting involved with if you've never done anything. But so here's where it was. I was 29 and I was finishing grad school, and I had an investor throw 6 figures of money at me to start a company, and I was scared to death. And so I went to my advisor, kind of a mentor within the MBA program here at the University of Georgia. And I'm like, Chris, what do I do, man? I'm in trouble. Like I got a yes. The guy's giving me money. What do I'm like completely underqualified, imposter syndrome to the extreme. I'm 29 years old I don't have 2 nickels to rub together. And he said, what you need is you need a mastermind. I'm like, a what? I never heard of it. At that point, I'm like, okay, whatever. And he says, I've got this group that meets once a month, and we just kind of sit down and talk through problems and try to solve those. You ought to come join that group. And I'm like, well, Chris, I don't know if you heard the part where I said I don't have any money. And he's like, well, it's okay. I'll scholarship you for a couple of months until you get on your feet. And I got to tell you, Gary, that was one of the most important discussions of my life with Chris, my mentor, because the guys that I met in that mastermind who were at that point growing businesses, and we all scaled. Me and another guy in the group went from 0 to 100 employees together. We literally started from 0 and went to 100. And I think we capped it about where you were, maybe a little less. And it was so transformational to have that kind of horsepower mentally. And you need someone to cry on occasionally. I mean, I'm just curious, did you have a good, what was your first mastermind experience personally for yourself?
Yeah, very similar in ways. I had a buddy that recommended me for this mastermind, and I went in there, and I'll be honest, Tyler, I was probably probably around 27 or so, and every other guy in the room is over their 50s. And of course, at the time, I thought they were old. Now that I'm in my 50s, they didn't seem so old now. How that changes. But the thing about it was they were so open of sharing their challenges. And what I did is it somewhat made me feel better because they had some of the same challenges I did. But the other thing is they always give you a different way to look at it. And here's what I'm doing about it. And they would talk about it, or they would get advice from the group. And then the people around the room would give that advice around the room. And there was things like, oh, wow, we can change that. And you got to think this is in the mid 90s now. And, I just bought out my partner in 94. And I said, how am I going to do this? Because I've got to pay him off and now do it. My banker said it couldn't be done. Of course, I'm going to prove him wrong. And so I told myself, I've got to do this because I've got to really up-level my game. And those gentlemen now, they're still friends of mine. Whenever we see them out, I don't see them all the time, but always have conversations with them. And I respect them because of what they gave me. But they said also, I was this young buck, trying to fight the world and stuff and going out there. And they said so much what they learned and what they was able to glean from me being someone there. So no matter what stage you're in, you fit in that group because of where you're at, and everybody's different. And even the ones that were in their 50s, some of them had just started their company. They just started later in life, and they got a hold of this company, and it's like, how am I going to take that to that next level? Yeah. And that's the value of it. And that's what I really get out of people. And, I tell everybody, business coaches or whatever it's for you, think about any professional team, any college team, any high school team. They have multiple coaches. Why would you be in business and not have a coach on your side? And I'm not trying to plug myself. I'm telling you, find someone that fits you, that works with you, but they're going to up level your game. And yes, it costs some money, but really, can you not do that? Because will you struggle? And then you're always in yourself and you're not getting to where you want to go. And then, of course, you've got this vision, but you have no clarity on how to get there. So you're challenged in that area. To me, that becomes the real secret behind it. Is it will get you there faster. Plus, you'll learn, I'll be honest, my first 4 or 5 years, I was in business, but I'm lucky I'm still in business because all it was from sheer work. And that's all that mattered to me.
Yeah, really, really well said. So it is one of those things, Gary, where, again, guys, we're gently trying to encourage you to change your mindset to be a professional. Remember, you can think about LeBron James or Tiger Woods or whatever your favorite athlete is. Amateurs end up paying to play, but they don't pay coaches. Professionals get paid to play, but they pay a lot of money for coaches because they want to be an elite performer. And I think if you're in a business, whether you're a contractor or you're an accountant like me, or you're kind of a full-time coach like Gary, if you've realized that you're onto something, and this isn't just a side hustle anymore, this is my livelihood, and it may have the potential to scale, you are going to have to choose to treat your vessel, yourself, your mind, the way LeBron James treats his body. I think the guy spends millions a year on coaches and masseuses and mindset coaches and neurotherapy and all this other stuff, because the ROI is so high for him to be able to perform at an elite level. And so, Gary, we've touched around it a little bit, but if we could kind of give our listeners kind of a concrete list of what are the benefits. Guys, I just want to say this again. Gary and I don't have enough room for all of you. Like, if somebody's interested in our groups, we'd love to tell you more about it. We're saying whether it's our groups or not, you got to find one. Tell us why, Gary. What are the main benefits of considering joining a mastermind?
Well, one, we said just that growth, the growth of yourself, really understanding yourself and getting that support from others. The other is, I think, just what you said, is a lot of times there's people that's ahead of you. Now, there's two things that can happen to people when you first see that. First time you may say, wow, they're there. I'll never get there. Don't give yourself that. That's a limiting belief, So then what you do is instead, how did they get there? Take them to lunch, start learning from them, hear what they say in the mastermind, and really dig in. What is making them tick? What has made them tick? And, over time, you'll get that in the mastermind. And most people are more than willing, if you're in their mastermind group or coaching group, they're going to allow you to say, hey, call me and let's talk, and let's kind of talk about business and stuff. And you can ask some of those questions and they'll kind of act a little bit of even as that mentor. Now, you can't call on them all the time because they're busy people too, but they're willing to do that and you're willing to help others out. So that's kind of the next step, is you're getting to see someone that's ahead of you. And what were some of them steps so you don't make those same mistakes? Just like I said, maybe someone sees that you need a sales manager in your organization or a sales director, and you don't have that, and they're recommending that. That's the third one I think is so crucial, is you got to be open to feedback. And it's not that they're going to give you criticism, but they're going to give you feedback. I tell everybody in my mastermind, the only thing I want you to do, I don't care if you agree or disagree with them. The only thing I don't want you to hear from you is saying, oh, that won't work. Instead, take it in and then digest it. You ultimately have to decide what you want to do for your business, but listen to that counsel, listen to that advice, and then decide if you act or not. Because ultimately it's your decision to decide. So that openness to really, really hear what you need to hear, because a good mastermind group's going to tell you, no, here's one of the challenges you have. Here's some of the things that's going to come out of that if you do this. So you better think twice about that. When you get that, don't get so bucked up saying, oh my God, I'm gonna move forward anyway. No, take that advice and really listen to it. Ultimately, you got to make the decision, but decide that. But I think that's three big things. If we're really open and willing to hear it, willing to see someone that's farther ahead of us, then that we're going to move forward in each one of those areas. And I think that's the key, is really it comes back to having that open mindset, and also that self-awareness we talked about earlier. It comes back too, because you got to be self-aware that you're willing to do that.
And it takes time to earn the trust with a new group. The group, Gary and I are in a couple of groups, or kind of the mini groups are kind of capped at about 10 members. I don't know what your masterminds actually look like, Gary. I'd love to hear more about them. But my mastermind ends up having about 15 members in each group, the one that I lead. And the point is that you don't kind of go from 0 to 10 overnight. You really do have to get to know the other people that are in your group. But I just want to encourage you guys, even maybe someone's listening to this and they're in a mastermind somewhere, at some point along your journey, and I've had to do this now 3 or 4 times in my career, but at some point you got to intentionally give the keys to somebody else in the group. What I'm saying there is you actually have to invite that feedback that Gary's talking about, because especially if you tend to put on a kind of like, I've got it all together facade, you may kind of put up some signals that you don't want to hear your buddy's feedback. And I just want to encourage you guys, whether this is a mastermind or just another group of buddies, you need to have people in your life that you trust enough to say, hey, listen, Gary, I'm going to figuratively give you the keys. What I mean by that is that you have permission. You have unlimited permission to speak into my life. I'm not always going to like it. I might buck up, but I'm going to listen. I'm going to take notes. I'm going to go home. I'm going to think about it. And guys, I can't tell you how many 6-figure screw ups I didn't have to make because people in my life cared enough about me to say, you idiot, what are you doing? Like, have you thought through this entire thing? And so, whatever you have to pay to be in a mastermind will be well worth it if you can save yourself some 6-figure screw ups. And I'm sure that there were guys there. Actually, there was a guy at the helm of almost a $50 million company in a mastermind I was in a few years ago, Gary. And he had the kind of advice that would save you 7-figure screw ups. It's just kind of like levels of your business as it grows. But any other comments about masterminds? I'd love to hear a bit more about your mastermind, about the group that you lead.
Well, I think that's one of the keys with any mastermind is find what fits for you that works in that area. For my mastermind, I get about 10 in a group. And then we also do business and life, so that's the thing, every mastermind is different. Some of them are just going to be strictly about business and it's all about business. Mine, I feel like unless we get the life component, we're missing a big part of that, because in my own story, I about messed that up with my marriage and with my children and stuff. And I don't want to see other people do that. And so that becomes the key. But I want the business side. I want people to get that clarity and what do they really want there, but also want them to think about their health, their spiritual side. What do they want in those areas? And what about those relationships? Because, if you're not around when the kids are young, they're not going to be around you when they're older. And stuff. And I've got 25 and a 23 and a 22-year-old now. And probably the one thing I like is that I changed early enough that they still want to be around us and, are very intentional about getting together with us. And so you've got to be intentional about what you do. So there's different areas, but then also financial, there's people, I hate business owners that put all their pot of gold only in their business. I want that to be a pot of gold for people. But I also want you to have other sources of income, because I've done the passive income route and some of those other things. I've invested. I've got multiple streams of income like we've all heard, but I have those because that helped me in a mastermind hearing other people that had rental property that was buying stock. And I started doing those, and all my income wasn't tied into one. Now, I was fortunate in 2012 to sell my business. I made money off of that, but then I put that right back into recurring passive income that today is paying dividends in what I'm doing now. And I'm getting to truly follow my passion and my purpose because I had those multiple streams of income. So multiple ways, but that's really with mine. We kind of really key in on those others. And then one of the other ones that I have as a life domain is learning, because you got to keep learning. And I don't know how many people, there's a lot of business owners so busy that they say, I don't have time to read. Well, today you can get Audible. Don't even have to read the book, but listen, podcast, there's so many ways that we can learn new things. So to me, that's some of the things that we bring in our mastermind that becomes crucial, because our whole goal is to make you better than when you started with us. And the key is it's about your whole life, not just one part of your life.
Well, guys, we're going to make sure that Gary's link to his website is in the show notes, whether you're going to see this on YouTube or listen to it in the podcast. So it's goascend.biz, ascend being ASCEND, goascend.biz if you want to learn more about the Ascend Mastermind with Gary Wilbers. Gary, I want to talk about that last thing you said there, which is freeing up energy to focus on the stuff that is truly life-giving and passion thrive for you. And one of the things that it's kind of fascinating timing, because as this episode's going live, the Paralympics will just be ending, and you've got a special interest when it comes to Special Olympics. Would you tell us about that a little bit?
Oh, I sure would. I play golf with a golf partner, Keith, that's an athlete in the Special Olympics, Missouri. And it's one of the greatest things that I do. And then I've been fortunate to be on the board of Special Olympics, Missouri. But the thing that I really love about the athletes, they will help you learn to be less just totally focused on one thing. When I see my athlete friends, they come up, they give you a hug. They're just glad to take life as it is. I'm the type of individual sometimes get too focused on something. Well, they always make me see a different side. And that's why I've been involved with Special Olympics since 1994. I've been involved with that organization. And it's because I tell people all the time, it's not because of what I do for them. It's what they do for me. Just took Keith up to see a ball game recently. And, we had a great time. And it's just those type of things just allows me to open up and see something, a different side of life. And I have no one in my family that's a Special Olympic athlete or has a disability, but it's really attracted me because it's really given me that case to really see something different and really help a cause that really, what I found out, the more I give, the more I get in return, that we all know that happens when you help organizations and especially nonprofits. You're going to get more than you give. And I've many times said, I'm too busy. I don't have time to go to the Special Olympics games. But every time I was coming back, I didn't care what was going on at the office after that.
I love it. Yeah. So Gary, you've given us so much wisdom here today. The idea of, hey guys, don't be isolated as an entrepreneur. Find a tribe around you so that you can up level, get better, grow as a leader, because the bottlenecks are at the top. And then be financially astute enough to build streams of income where you can focus your energy on impacting the world in a lasting way via maybe some nonprofit. And I guess I just want to ask you one more question, Gary. This has been a great interview. Thank you for your time here. But listen, man, as a high performing executive, I just ask everybody this: is there a habit, a hack, a routine, a rhythm that gives you unusual ROI in your life that you could share with us?
Yeah, my big one, and I've been doing this since the mid-90s, is weekly plan down the daily planning. I literally look at my week every week, and I would say I do this 99% of the time. I may not do it on vacation because that's the only time during I will not do it. But I set a weekly plan in place and tell myself what's the 1 to 3 most important things I want to get done this week. Now, I may have a longer list than that, but what's the 1 to 3 most important? And then every day I try to look at my day and say, like this podcast, it was one of the most important things to do today. And that's where you've got to show up. And what are those 1 to 3 things each day? I guarantee you, because too many business owners say, I've got all this to do. And they kind of run around in a circle, and they don't get a lot accomplished. And then what does it do? Creates tomorrow. I've even got more to do. Take your time and do a weekly plan every week and do a daily and tell yourself, what's the 1 to 3 most important things, and check those off and put them on a sheet of paper. You can have that big list that's there that you'd like to get to, but what's the 1 to 3 most important things each day?
Love it. That's such great advice. Gary, thank you so much for joining Return on Podcast today. Again, we'll make sure everyone has links to Gary's various websites and social media. Gary, it's a joy getting to talk to you, man. I'm glad that I know you as a brother, and we'll have to have you back on the show sometime soon. Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me, Tyler, and thanks for what you're doing, because you're making a difference with your podcast and with your listeners. So appreciate what you're doing, brother.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. So guys, and to that point, for those of you who have now made it 33 minutes into a podcast, we just want to say we're grateful. Your energy is valuable. Your time is valuable. And we just hope you glean something valuable from this episode with my friend, Gary Wilbers. So until we see you next week, we hope you kill it. Take care.